Leo, tomorrow you're coming with us to the Grand Astoria. We're crashing a party. My mom's voice crackled through my headset, yanking me out of the virtual war zone I was dominating. The thought of a free 5-star meal was all the convincing I needed. I agreed without a second thought. What I didn't know was that I was the guest of honor at this engagement party. And up on the stage, the legendary Ice Queen CEO was staring right at me. Leo, be ready tomorrow at noon. We're going to the Grand Astoria. That guy, the one who runs Vance Corporation, his daughter is getting engaged. It's going to be a huge affair. I want you to come see how the other half lives, and hey, you'll get a decent meal out of it. Over the phone, my mom's voice was as strong and commanding as ever. I was deep in the zone, headset on, eyes glued to the screen of my high-end gaming rig, locked in a battle of epic proportions. Her call was a welcome interruption. My first thought was that tomorrow's lunch was settled. One less thing to worry about. Got it, Mom. What time? 11:30. Meet us at the entrance. And wear something decent. Don't you dare embarrass me. You got it. I hung up and dove straight back into the fight, the conversation already fading from my mind. After all, the CEO of Vance Corporation getting engaged was a million miles from my world. For me, the only takeaway was a free lunch. My name is Leo Miller. I'm 24, unemployed, and my greatest pleasure is being a hermit and gaming all day. I get by on a little nest egg I saved up from my old days as a professional game booster. My parents are just your average working class folks. The only reason we get an invite to an event like this was probably through some distant relative we barely knew. The next day, I actually dug through my closet and pulled out the only respectable thing I owned, a casual blazer and slacks. I ran a hand through my hair, looked in the mirror, and figured I looked human enough. My parents were already waiting for me when I got to the Grand Astoria. The second she saw me, my mom descended, fussing with my collar. "Look at you," she muttered. "You're going to get moldy staying at home all day. Make sure you eat plenty. This is the good stuff, so don't be shy." My dad just smiled. "We mostly just wanted to get you out of the house, son. See a bit of the world." I nodded and followed them into the ridiculously opulent ballroom. The moment I stepped inside, the sheer scale of the place hit me. Massive crystal chandeliers dripped from the ceiling. Long tables were draped in pristine white cloths, and men and women in designer clothes mingled, holding champagne flutes. The air was a thick cocktail of expensive perfume and gourmet food. My mom leaned in and whispered, "See, this is the high life. Vance Corporation is the real deal in River City. Top of the food chain. The woman getting engaged today is the one in charge of it all, Isabella Vance." "Oh," I said, completely unimpressed. My eyes were already scanning the buffet tables, trying to figure out where the best food was. We were seated at a table in the back corner with a bunch of other relatives in the same boat as us. Everyone was nibbling on hors d'oeuvres they'd normally never buy while gossiping about the party. I heard the groom is a total mystery. Not a peep about him before this. Well, yeah, we're talking about Isabella Vance, River City's #1 ice queen, a titan of industry. Who could possibly land her? Probably the heir to some secret old money family. Who else would be worthy? I kept my head down, focusing all my attention on the lobster tail on my plate. I couldn't care less about their talk of ice queens and mysterious heirs. The giant claw in my hand was way more interesting. Just then, the ballroom lights dimmed. A single spotlight hit the center of the stage. The host's voice boomed through the speakers. "Ladies and gentlemen, please give the warmest round of applause for our beautiful bride-to-be, the president of Vance Corporation, Ms. Isabella Vance." I instinctively looked up. A woman in a stunning white mermaid gown walked gracefully onto the stage. She was tall, with a figure that was nothing short of perfect. Her face was breathtakingly beautiful, but held a frosty expression, and her eyes, cold as ice, swept across the room with a natural, commanding presence. The entire ballroom fell silent, every eye glued to her. Even I had to admit, the woman's beauty was suffocating. But so what? I was about to go back to my lobster when the host spoke again. "And now, let's give an equally thunderous welcome to our groom, Mr. Leo Miller." I almost sprayed a mouthful of lobster across the table. Leo Miller. Which Leo Miller? It had to be someone else with the same name, right? I glanced around, only to see everyone at my table, and in fact the entire room, whispering and looking around, try to spot this lucky guy named Leo. My mom nudged me, her face a mask of confusion. Son, is he talking about you? Before I could even say no way, I saw her. Isabella Vance. Her icy gaze cut through the crowd and landed squarely, precisely on me. In the same instant, a second blindingly bright spotlight shot out and pinned me in my forgotten corner. In that one moment, 1,000 pairs of eyes snapped toward me. I saw shock, confusion, disdain, and outright contempt. My cheap suit, my out-of-place posture, everything about me was magnified under that unforgiving light. My mind went completely blank. What was happening? I was just here to crash a party for the free food. How did I suddenly become the groom? Next to me, my mom's jaw was hanging so wide you could fit an egg in it. My dad's chopsticks clattered to the floor. What? What is going on? My mom's voice trembled. Before I could process anything, 2 men in sharp black suits were standing in front of me, making a polite this-way gesture. Mr. Miller, Ms. Vance is waiting for you. I stood up mechanically, and under the weight of 1,000 scrutinizing glares, I walked stiffly toward the stage, one step at a time. Every step felt like I was walking on clouds. The whispers around me swelled into a tidal wave. You gotta be kidding me. That's the groom? What's with the cheap suit? Who's this guy? Never seen him before. Did they just drag him in off the street? Did Ms. Vance make a mistake? He looks like he's here to bust tables, not get married. Oh my God, my goddess is getting engaged to a guy like that? I can't accept this. The words stabbed at me like needles, but I didn't have the mental capacity to care. I finally reached Isabella Vance. Up close, she was even more stunning. Her skin was like porcelain, her features flawless. But the chill in her eyes was real, cold enough to freeze a man solid. She looked at me, her lips parting slightly. Her voice wasn't loud, but it carried clearly throughout the silent ballroom. He is my fiancé, Leo Miller. The moment the words left her mouth, the room exploded. Isabella's declaration was like a bomb going off. Is this a joke? Her fiancé is some country bumpkin. This is insane. It's like putting a diamond on a pile of dirt. There has to be something else going on. Maybe the kid has some insane connections we don't know about. Some rich kid in an Armani suit said sourly. His friend scoffed. Connections? Look at his outfit. The whole thing is worth maybe $100. I bet he's just some loser who won the lottery. I heard every single cutting remark. I stood rigidly beside Isabella, feeling like a monkey in a cage. I racked my brain, trying to find any memory, any clue about an engagement. Nothing. I looked at her, lowered my voice so only she could hear, and hissed, "What the hell is going on?" She didn't even look at me, maintaining her perfect Ice Queen facade. Her voice was just as cold, without a trace of warmth. Play along. I'll explain everything later, and I'll compensate you. Play along. It clicked. This whole thing was a charade, and I was just some prop she grabbed at the last minute. A white-hot anger flared up inside me. Who the hell did she think she was? Just because she was rich and powerful, she could just manipulate a stranger's life like this, treat me like a fool, and then demand my cooperation? I glanced down at my parents. They were being pointed at by the people around them, their faces etched with panic and confusion. They just wanted to bring their son out for a nice meal, and now they were trapped in this humiliating nightmare. The rage burned away every last scrap of my reason. The host was still on stage, hemming it up. What a handsome couple. A match made in heaven. And now, let's have our groom, Mr. Leo Miller. Place this ring, a symbol of eternal love, on the finger of our beautiful Ms. Isabella Vance. An attendant approached with a velvet box. Inside lay a massive pink diamond ring, glittering under the lights. Everyone held their breath, waiting for this historic moment. Isabella finally turned her head slightly, her eyes ordering me to comply. I took a deep breath, a cold smirk playing on my lips. Fine. You want me to play along? I'll play along. I took the ring. Under the envious, hateful glares of the entire room, I walked slowly toward Isabella. The corner of her mouth seemed to twitch upward, thinking I had given in. I stood before her and raised the ring. Just as everyone thought I was about to slide it onto her finger, I flicked my wrist, making a move that made every jaw in the room drop. I casually tossed the priceless diamond ring into the decorative champagne tower next to the stage. Plink! The ring sank into the golden liquid and disappeared. The ballroom fell into a dead, shocked silence. Everyone was frozen. The host's mouth hung open. The attendant nearly dropped the velvet box. The guests below stared, wide-eyed, as if they'd just witnessed the apocalypse. The frost on Isabella's face cracked. For the first time, her beautiful eyes showed shock and disbelief, which was quickly replaced by a tidal wave of fury. "What are you doing?" she hissed, the words ground out from between her clenched teeth. I looked at her, and for the first time, I smiled. It was a smile full of mockery. "My apologies, Ms. Vance." I leaned in close to her ear and said, just loud enough for the front rows to hear, "I'm not really interested in acting. And a piece of advice. Next time you need someone to be your shield, maybe hire a professional. Amateurs like me, we tend to mess up the show." Without waiting to see her thunderous expression, I turned, grabbed the host's microphone, and addressed the now buzzing crowd. "Hey everyone, sorry for the little misunderstanding," I announced, my voice booming through the speakers. "My name is Leo Miller. I'm unemployed, and I'm just here with my parents to crash the party and get some free food. As for this engagement, this fiancé business, it's all a load of crap. Ms. Vance has been working too hard, I think. She must have mistaken me for someone else." My words echoed through the hall, clear as day. The crowd erupted. "Holy crap, what a plot twist. Is this kid insane? He just threw her ring away. That was the heart of the ocean. It's worth millions. He just slapped Isabella Vance in the face in front of everyone. This kid is so dead." My parents were pale with terror. My mom looked like she was about to faint. And just then, an enraged voice cut through the chaos. "You bastard! How dare you do this to my sister? Somebody break his legs." A young man in an obnoxious pink suit stormed up from the front row, pointing a finger at my nose. He looked a bit like Isabella, but his face was twisted with arrogance and rage. This must be her brother, Caleb Vance. At his command, 7 or 8 burly men in suits closed in from all sides, their expressions grim. The guests scrambled backward, clearing a large space around us. This lovely engagement party was about to turn into a brawl. Isabella's face was a mask of cold fury. She probably never imagined that the simple prop she'd picked up would be this stubborn, not only refusing to cooperate, but daring to flip the whole table. She stared at me, her eyes filled with murder. "You can still regret this." I laughed. "Regret?" I shook my head. That word isn't in my vocabulary. I shrugged off the restrictive blazer and tossed it aside. If we couldn't talk this out, we'd settle it with our fists. Today, I was going to show them all that even a party crasher bites back. Seeing that I was not only unafraid, but actually ready to fight, Caleb's face turned beet red. "Still talking tough? Get him. Break both his legs. Let's see him stand then." At his order, the 8 bodyguards charged at me like a pack of wolves. The guests gasped. A few of the women covered their eyes. My parents were terrified. My mom screamed, "Leo, run, run." Why would I run? The first guy reached me, his fist the size of a cinder block whistling tore my face. To a normal person, that punch would cause a concussion. To me, his movement was as slow as a snail. I sidestepped, easily dodging the blow. My left hand shot out like a viper, clamping down on his wrist and twisting sharply downward. Crack! A sickening crunch of bone echoed in the silence. Before the man could even scream, my right leg snapped up in a clean, vicious roundhouse kick that connected squarely with his knee. Thud! His massive body dropped like a felled tree. He collapsed, clutching his shattered leg and letting out a howl of agony. The whole sequence was fluid, brutally fast. The other bodyguards froze mid-stride, shock and horror on their faces. They never expected this skinny-looking kid to be so vicious. "What are you waiting for? Get him! All of you!" Caleb shrieked from behind them. The men exchanged a look, gritted their teeth, and surrounded me again. I just smirked and charged forward to meet them. Thwack! Bam! Crack! The ballroom filled with the sickening sounds of fists hitting flesh and bones snapping. I moved through them like a tiger through a flock of sheep. Every move I made, another bodyguard went down. Jabs, elbow strikes, knee thrusts, leg sweeps. There was nothing fancy about my moves. They were all direct, efficient, lethal. Instincts honed over years in a life they couldn't possibly imagine, bought and paid for with blood. Less than 30 seconds. All 8 of the huge bodyguard were on the floor, clutching broken arms or legs, groaning in pain, completely neutralized. The ballroom was silent. Everyone was stunned by the brutal, shocking display. Those rich kids who had been laughing at me were now staring, mouths agape, their eyes filled with fear and disbelief. They couldn't wrap their heads around it. How could a poor kid in a cheap suit possess such terrifying fighting skills? Caleb was speechless, pointing at me with a trembling finger, unable to form a single word. And on the stage, Isabella Vance's eternally frozen expression finally shattered. She was staring at me, and the contempt in her eyes had been replaced by a heavy, probing curiosity. She clearly couldn't understand how an ordinary person, someone her people had done a background check on, someone with a history as clean as a blank sheet of paper, could be a master fighter. I dusted off my hands and walked slowly toward the terrified Caleb Vance. You were saying something about breaking my legs. My voice was quiet, but in the silent hall, it boomed like thunder. Caleb scrambled backward, falling flat on his butt. You stay away from me. I'm warning you. Do you know who I am? My sister is Isabella Vance. You can't afford to mess with Vance Corporation, he yelled, his voice a mix of bravado and terror. Vance Corporation? I stood over him, looking down. Is that supposed to be impressive? I slowly lifted my foot. Caleb squeezed his eyes shut and let out a terrified scream. Stop! Isabella's icy voice cut through the air. My foot paused. I turned my head to look at her. She took a deep breath, seemingly having recovered from the shock. Once again, the high and mighty Ice Queen. Today was a misunderstanding, she said, her eyes locked on mine. I apologize for my brother's reckless behavior. You can leave now. Her tone was less an apology and more of a command. Leave? She treats me like a puppet, humiliates my parents, and her brother tries to have my legs broken, and now she thinks a simple misunderstanding will fix everything. Not a chance. I lowered my foot and turned back to face her completely. Ms. Vance, the engagement might be fake, but you announcing me as your fiancé in front of everyone. That was real, wasn't it? Isabella's brow furrowed. What do you mean? I don't mean much. I smiled, gesturing to the groaning bodyguards on the floor, then to her pale-faced brother. Your brother tried to break my legs. I was just defending myself. But now, I've changed my mind. I walked over to the champagne tower, and under the stunned gazes of everyone present, I reached in and fished out the diamond ring. Then, holding the dripping ring, I walked back to Isabella. Since the show has already started, it needs a proper ending. I dropped to one knee, held the massive pink diamond up to her, and with a playful smile on my face, I said loudly, Isabella Vance, will you marry me? Boom! If throwing the ring was like tossing a rock into a calm lake, my words were a depth charge. The entire room went insane. This guy not only beat up the Vance family's people, but now he had the audacity to propose to her. He was either completely out of his mind, or he had some terrifying secret ace up his sleeve, something that made him powerful enough to defy the Vance sass. Isabella stared at me, her chest heaving. It was clear my unpredictable move had pushed her to her limit. She thought I was humiliating her, but she didn't realize that from the moment I knelt, the control of this entire game had shifted completely into my hands. Now the choice was hers. She could reject me in front of everyone, letting this engagement party devolve into an unsalvageable train wreck, allowing me to grind the Vance family's reputation into the dust. Or she could grit her teeth and say yes. The air grew thick and heavy. Every eye in the room was fixed on us, waiting for her answer. Isabella's expression shifted from furious to pale, then to a faint, helpless blush. Her icy eyes were burning with two flames, one of rage and the other of being trapped with no way out. She bit her lip so hard it looked like it might bleed. She wanted to say no. She wanted nothing more than to have me torn to pieces. But she couldn't. The guest list tonight included not only River City's high society, but also several major media outlets. If she publicly rejected the fiancé she had just personally announced, then tomorrow, Vance Corporation and Isabella Vance herself would become the biggest joke in the entire city. Business Empress humiliated at own engagement party. A headline like that could make Vance Corp's stock plummet, wiping out billions overnight. She couldn't afford to lose. The seconds ticked by, each one feeling like an eternity. The guest's initial shock had transformed into intense curiosity and anticipation. They whispered amongst themselves, every single one of them dying to see how this drama of the year would end. This kid is ruthless. He's got her backed into a corner. A brilliant reversal. He completely turned the tables. Who is this guy? I don't care who he is. Guts like that. Every man in River City should be taking notes. I could feel the gazes of the rich kids in the crowd shifting from contempt to awe and even admiration. I remained on one knee, a faint smile on my lips, watching her calmly. I knew she had no choice. Finally, after a long, crushing silence, Isabella slowly closed her eyes. When she opened them again, the fire was gone, replaced by a bottomless, cold abyss. From between her teeth, she squeezed out a single word. Yes. The word was quiet, but in the silent ballroom, it reached every ear. The room erupted in a thunderous wave of applause and cheers, as if the whole chaotic scene had never happened. The host, ecstatic, scrambled for his microphone and yelled in a trembling voice. She said yes. She said yes. Let's congratulate the happy couple. Now, will the groom please place the ring on our beautiful bride's finger? I stood up, took Isabella's cold left hand, and slowly slid the champagne-soaked diamond ring onto her finger. The moment the ring was on, I could feel her hand trembling slightly, not from excitement, from rage. I leaned close to her ear and whispered, so only we could hear, "A pleasure doing business with you, Ms. Vance." Her head snapped up, her icy eyes boring into me as if trying to burn holes through my face. "Who are you?" she asked through clenched teeth, her voice low and filled with suppressed fury. "Me?" I smiled. "I'm Leo Miller, an unemployed guy who just got engaged to you." The train wreck of an engagement ceremony finally concluded in a bizarrely harmonious atmosphere. Guests flocked to congratulate us, their faces plastered with professional smiles that couldn't hide their burning curiosity. Isabella played the part of the perfect puppet, dealing with the endless stream of well-wishers. I, on the other hand, was happy to slip away back to my corner table. My parents, completely bewildered by the roller coaster of events, grabbed me as soon as I sat down. My mom's voice shook. "Son, is this for real?" I popped a piece of tiramisu into my mouth and mumbled, "Nah, it's fake. We're just acting." Acting? My dad's eyes went wide. "You call beating the Vance family's bodyguards to a pulp acting? You call getting the CEO herself to agree to marry you acting?" I shrugged. Accidents happen. I couldn't explain it to them. I couldn't tell them that their seemingly ordinary son was once codenamed Wraith, the top agent of the Pantheon, the most elite organization in the underworld. I couldn't tell them that I'd seen more bloodshed than they'd seen rain. 3 years ago, I got tired of living on the edge. I faked my own death to get out, to come back to the city where I was born, wanting nothing more than to be a normal guy who played video games. My fighting skills were just a minor perk from my past life. I thought my life would stay quiet forever. But today, Isabella Vance showed up and tossed a boulder into my calm little pond. After the reception, I was stopped by Isabella's assistant, a sharp-looking woman with gold-rimmed glasses. "Mr. Miller, Ms. Vance would like to see you in her office." I glanced at my exhausted parents. "I need to take my parents home first." The assistant nodded. "The car is ready." A black Rolls-Royce Phantom was waiting at the hotel entrance. My parents, who had never seen anything like it, nervously climbed inside. In the car, my mom was still muttering, "Son, be honest with me. Did you win the lottery?" I had to laugh. "Mom, if I won the lottery, the first thing I'd do is buy you and Dad a mansion." Then, that Ms. Vance, she's got some issues, I improvised. She had a long-lost love who looked exactly like me. She saw me today and got me mixed up with him, insisted on the whole engagement thing. Just think of it like a crazy movie you watched. It's not real. The explanation was absurd, but for my parents, it was the easiest one to swallow. They exchanged a look and nodded, half convinced. After dropping them off, I took the Rolls-Royce to the Vance Corporation headquarters, a skyscraper that dominated the downtown skyline. Isabella's office was the size of a basketball court, with a floor-to-ceiling window that offered a panoramic view of River City. She had changed out of her gown and into a crisp white pantsuit. She sat behind a massive desk, her beautiful face still covered in a layer of frost. "Name your price," she said, getting straight to the point. Her voice was ice. I didn't answer right away. I walked over to the window, and looked down at the glittering city lights. "The view from up here is pretty nice," I said conversationally. Isabella's frown deepened. She hated being ignored, and she hated not being in control. "I don't have time to waste." She tapped her pen on the desk, her voice edged with impatience. "Just give me a number. 1 million? 5? Or do you want a position at Vance Corporation?" In her world, a poor kid like me, after a day like today, would surely be looking for a massive payday. She was ready to solve this problem with money. After all, in her eyes, there was nothing money couldn't solve. And if there was, it just meant you weren't spending enough. I turned around and faced her, a playful smirk on my face. "Ms. Vance, do you really think that saving you from a multi-billion-dollar PR disaster is only worth 5 million? Her eyes narrowed. She hadn't expected me to cut straight to the heart of the matter. For the first time, she started to see me as more than just some street punk she could easily dismiss. "Then what do you want?" she asked, leaning forward slightly, her tone serious. I drew out the words, enjoying the tense look on her face. "I want you to honor our engagement." "What?" Isabella shot to her feet, knocking over a stack of files. She stared at me in utter disbelief, as if I'd just told the world's most ridiculous joke. "Are you insane? Do you think this is some kind of soap opera? You're an unemployed nobody. What makes you think for 1 second that I would ever marry you?" Her voice rose with anger, losing its usual calm. "This is what?" I slowly raised my right hand, extended my index finger, and flicked it gently through the air. An almost invisible flicker of force shot from my fingertip and struck the frame of a priceless painting hanging on the wall behind her. Crack! The frame split, and the painting crashed to the floor. Isabella's pupils contracted. She stared at the fallen painting, then back at me, her face a mask of disbelief. That painting was at least 30 feet away from me. To damage something from that distance without touching it, it was beyond her understanding of reality. A master martial artist? Or a metahuman from the stories? She had met all kinds of people in the business world and had heard whispers of those who existed outside the normal rules of society. But she never imagined she would meet one, especially not like this. Who are you?" For the first time, there was a tremor of fear in her voice. Fear comes from the unknown, and right now, to her, I was the biggest unknown of all. "I told you, my name is Leo." I lower my hand, just an unemployed guy with a few special talents. Of course, I wasn't a metahuman. That little trick was just a basic application of my internal energy. For the old me, it was as easy as breathing. But to a normal person, it was nothing short of magic. Sometimes, a small miracle is more persuasive than any words. Isabella collapsed back in her chair, her chest rising and falling rapidly as a war raged within her. The look she gave me was filled with caution, confusion, and a spark of curiosity she hadn't yet realized was there. After a long silence, she finally spoke, her voice hoarse. "Why are you doing this? What is your goal?" "My goal." I walked to her desk, leaned forward, and planted my hands on its surface, closing the distance between us. I could smell the faint, cool fragrance that seemed to cling to her. "My goal is simple," I said, looking directly into her eyes. "I'm not interested in you, your money, or your company. I just want to live a quiet life. But today, you drag me into your mess. You shatter my peace. And for that, you have to take responsibility. And the way you'll do that is..." For the next year, we maintained this engagement. Isabella was stunned. She had considered every possibility. Maybe I was after money. Maybe power. Maybe I was sent by a rival family to humiliate her. But she never, ever imagined my demand would be this. Maintain a fake engagement for a year. What was in it for me? "Why?" she asked instinctively. "Because it's fun." I straightened up and shrugged. I think being the fiancé of River City's #1 ice queen for a year could be very entertaining. Don't you? Isabella was speechless. She was convinced I was a complete and utter madman. But right now, there was absolutely nothing she could do about it. She couldn't fight me. She couldn't buy me. And after that little display of power, she didn't dare try to threaten me. For the first time in her life, she felt completely helpless. Fine. Finally, like a deflating balloon, she sagged back in her chair. "I agree. 1 year. We'll sign an agreement. After 1 year, The engagement is automatically terminated. You can't harass me for any reason or demand any of my assets. Deal, I said without hesitation. And she added, during this year, we are engaged in name only. You will not interfere in my personal life. We will stay out of each other's way. Well, I rubbed my chin, a wicked grin spreading across my face. I don't know about that. After all, I am your fiancé now. If some idiot tries to make a move on my wife-to-be, I can't just stand by and do nothing, can I? Isabella's face instantly turned to ice again. She knew this bastard wouldn't be that easy. Just then, the office door was thrown open with a bang. Caleb rushed in with a group of people, led by an old man in a traditional jacket whose temples were bulging. Sis, I brought Master Wallace. We're going to break this bastard's legs for good. Caleb pointed at me and roared. The old man, Master Wallace, locked his eyes on me the moment he entered. A sharp glint flashed in his cloudy eyes. Young man, impressive skills. May I ask who your master is? The old man asked, his tone heavy with a hint of arrogance. I glanced at him. From the energy he was giving off, he was probably an external-style martial artist who had reached the peak of his training. A master among normal people. But in my eyes, he was no different from the bodyguards earlier. No master. Self-taught. I answered coolly. Such arrogance. Master Wallace snorted. Since you refuse to say, then allow this old man to test your skills myself. Before the words were even out of his mouth, he stomped his foot, and the marble floor seemed to shake. He launched himself at me like a pouncing tiger, a whirlwind of motion. Master Wallace, stop! Isabella cried out, but it was too late. His iron fist was already inches from my face. I didn't even blink. Just as his fist was about to make contact, I moved. I simply lifted my right hand, extended my index and middle fingers, and, with impossible speed, I gently caught his fist between them, like picking up a peanut with a pair of chopsticks. Time seemed to stand still. The arrogant, fierce expression on Master Wallace's face froze, replaced by utter shock and disbelief. He felt as if his fist was caught in a vice. No matter how hard he tried, he couldn't move it an inch forward, couldn't even pull it back. The power coming from my fingers felt gentle, yet it was as vast and deep as the ocean, completely neutralizing his force. How? How is this possible? Sweat beaded on his forehead, his voice trembling. He had trained for decades. In the martial arts world of River City, he was confident that besides a few old reclusive masters, no one could match him. But today, his full-powered strike was casually stopped by a young man with 2 fingers. This was a martial arts. This was sorcery. Too weak. I shook my head, a hint of disappointment in my voice. Then I squeezed. Crack. Crunch. A series of sickening cracks echoed through the room. AR. Master Wallace let out an inhuman scream and collapsed to the floor like a puppet with its strings cut, cradling his completely mangled hand and writhing in agony. I had crushed the bones in his fist. The office fell silent once more. Caleb and the men he'd brought with him were stunned into statues. Their greatest weapon, the martial arts master the Vance family paid a fortune to retain, hadn't even lasted a single move against this young man. And he'd been defeated in the most humiliating way possible. Caleb felt his legs begin to tremble, a chill shooting up his spine. He finally realized what kind of monster he had provoked. And Isabella, though she had already witnessed my magic, was still completely floored by the scene. She looked at me, her expression a complex mixture of emotions. How many more secrets was this man hiding? I let go, as if I'd just done something trivial, and walked over to the petrified Caleb. So you still want to break my legs? I asked with a smile. No, sir. Big brother, I was wrong. I was so wrong. Caleb dropped to his knees with a thud and grabbed my leg, sobbing, snot, and tears streaming down his face. So much for the arrogant young master. In the face of absolute power and the fear of death, his pride was worthless. I was blind. I'm an idiot. Please, just let me go. I'm not worth your time, he blubbered, slapping himself hard across the face. I found his pathetic display almost comical. All right, stop crying, I said, kicking his hand away. You want me to let you go? Fine. Kneel down and give your sister and me 3 good bows. We'll count it as your wedding gift. Caleb froze for a second. Then, As if granted a pardon from the governor, he immediately turned to us and slammed his forehead against the floor. Thud, thud, thud. Brother-in-law, sister, I wish you a happy marriage and a long life together. That brother-in-law was delivered with genuine, heartfelt terror. Isabella's face flushed crimson. She shot Caleb a glare, a mixture of shame and anger. I, however, nodded in satisfaction. That's better. Now get out. Caleb scrambled to his feet as if he'd been reborn. He and his men hauled the still wailing Master Wallace out of the office and fled. Finally, it was just the two of us again. The atmosphere was a little awkward. Now, I broke the silence, pulling up a chair and sitting down opposite her. We can discuss the details of our agreement. Isabella took a deep breath, forcing herself to calm down. She knew that from this day forward, her life was about to be turned upside down by the man in front of her. She pulled out a pre-drafted contract and slid it across the desk. This is a prenuptial agreement and a non-disclosure agreement. Take a look. If there are no problems, sign it. I picked it up and gave it a quick scan. The terms were ridiculously strict, basically stating that I couldn't touch a single penny of the Vance family's assets and had to leave with nothing after the engagement ended, all while keeping my mouth shut about our arrangement. I picked up the pen and, without a second thought, signed my name at the bottom, Leo Miller. Isabella was taken aback by how quickly I agreed. You're not going to read it carefully? No need. I pushed the contract back to her. I'm not going to take a dime from you anyway. Like I said, I'm not interested in your money. I'm interested in you. Of course, I didn't say that last part out loud. Isabella stared at my signature, a whirlwind of emotions inside her. She suddenly realized she couldn't figure this man out at all. All right, contract signed. From now on, I'm your official fiancé, I said, stretching. So, as my fiancé, shouldn't you sort out my living situation? I can't keep living in that little rental of mine. If word got out, it'd be your reputation on the line, Miss. See. Isabella paused, then realized I was right. They were engaged. They couldn't live apart. She rubbed her temples wearily. I have a villa at the Summit. You can stay there for now. The Summit. I raised an eyebrow. Isn't that the most exclusive neighborhood in River City? I hear one of those places costs a fortune. You'll be living there alone, she added quickly. Nope, I shook my head. We're engaged. We can't live separately. What would people say? To make our relationship look more convincing, I think we should live together. You. She looked like she was about to slam her fist on the table. Leo, don't push your luck. I'm helping you, I said with a sincere expression. Think about it. We just got engaged today. If we're caught living apart tomorrow, what will the media write? They'll suspect our relationship is on the rocks, and then Vance Corp's stock price. Enough. Isabella cut me off. She knew I was threatening her with the stock price again. And as much as it infuriated her, she had to admit I had a point. Fine, she said through gritted teeth. But we have to set some ground rules. We live in the same house, but not the same room. You stay in the guest room, and you're not to set foot in my bedroom. And you are not to. Yeah, I get it. I waved my hand, cutting her off. Don't worry, I'm not interested in your Ice Queen act anyway. I started whistling and headed for the door. So key? Address? Isabella, trembling with rage, pulled a key fob and a key card from her drawer and slammed them on the desk. Get out. You got it. I grabbed the keys and strode out of the office, leaving Isabella alone amidst the chaos and the mess I had made of her life. She had a sinking feeling that her calm, orderly existence of the past 20-plus years had just come to a screeching halt. And the man responsible, that bastard Leo, was humming a cheerful tune on his way to his new multi-million-dollar home. The Summit was located on the shores of Lunar Lake, east of the city, and was River City's most prestigious residential area. Every villa was designed by a world-renowned architect, and the security was said to be so tight a fly couldn't get in. It was late when Isabella's car dropped me off. I swiped the card and opened the door. The sight that greeted me was staggering. This wasn't a villa, it was a palace. A 40-foot ceiling in the living room, a massive crystal chandelier, a complete set of classic European furniture, and an indoor heated pool with a glass roof that looked up at the stars. Tis TSK. The simple, boring life of the rich, I muttered to myself. The villa was quiet, except for a housekeeper in her 50s named Mrs. Gable. Isabella had clearly called ahead. Mrs. Gable, though curious about the sudden appearance of a Mr. Miller, was the epitome of professionalism and respect. "Mr. Miller, your room is ready. It's the first door on the left on the second floor," she said politely. "Thanks, Mrs. Gable." I nodded. "Has Isabella? Has she come home yet?" The familiar way I said her name made my own skin crawl. Mrs. Gable blinked, then smiled warmly. "Ms. Vance is still at the office. She's a very hard worker and often comes home late. Are you hungry, sir? I can prepare a late-night snack for you." "No, thanks. I'm still full from the party." I waved her off and dragged my simple luggage, which was just a backpack with a few changes of clothes and my precious laptop, upstairs. My room was huge, bigger than my entire old apartment. A king-size bed, a walk-in closet, an en-suite bathroom, and a balcony overlooking Lunar Lake. I plugged in my laptop, booted it up, and logged into my game. I played until the wee hours of the morning before I finally, contentedly logged off, took a shower, and got ready for bed. Just as I was drifting off, I heard the sound of a car engine downstairs. I knew it was Isabella. I rolled over and ignored it. We might be living under the same roof, but for now, we were still just strangers who knew each other a little too well. The next day, I woke up whenever I felt like it. When I went downstairs, Isabella was already in the dining room, eating breakfast. She was dressed in a sharp business suit, her hair tied up in an elegant bun, revealing the long, graceful curve of her neck. With her subtle, perfect makeup, she was back to being the untouchable ice queen. She glanced at me as I came down, but didn't even bother to say hello. I didn't feel like trying either. I sat down opposite her and started munching on a piece of toast. Mrs. Gable brought me a glass of milk and a plate of fried eggs, a warm, motherly smile on her face. The only sound in the dining room was the quiet clinking of silverware. The atmosphere was so awkward you could cut it with a knife. "Ahem," I said, trying to make conversation. "Sleep well." Isabella didn't look up. "Fine. Busy day at the office? Need any help?" "No." "Oh." I took the hint and shut up. Try to talk to this iceberg was a form of self-torture. After breakfast, Isabella picked up her briefcase, ready to leave. "I'm going to the branch office in West Side today. I won't be back for lunch," she said coldly, as if speaking to the air. "Okay, got it," I nodded. She walked to the door, slipped on her heels, and was just about to leave when she paused and turned, looking at me with a complex expression. What are your plans for today?" "Me?" I pointed to myself. "No plans. Just gonna stay home and game." Isabella's mouth twitched almost imperceptibly. "Leo, I don't care who you were before, but now, you are the future son-in-law of the Vance family. I expect you to be mindful of your image. Sitting around at home all day playing video games. It's not a good look." Her tone was lecturing. I laughed. "Ms. Vance, our contract didn't say anything about me not being able to play video games. Besides, what's wrong with it? I'm not spending your money. This is how I make a living." She was speechless. "How about this?" I said, an idea popping into my head. "Since I've got nothing better to do, how about I be your driver?" "My driver?" She looked at me like I was an idiot. "Can you even drive? Do you have a license?" "Of course." I pulled a small card out of my pocket and waved it in front of her. It was the license I'd gotten shortly after returning to the country. Isabella looked at me doubtfully, weighing her options. Having me as her driver meant she could keep an eye on me and stop me from causing trouble. It would also help sell the illusion that we were a loving couple. It didn't seem like such a bad idea. "Fine," she finally agreed. "There are a dozen cars in the garage. Pick one." With that, she turned and left without another word. I smiled, finished the last of my milk, and sauntered off to the garage. When I opened the door, I was once again reminded of the insane wealth I'd stumbled into. Rolls-Royces, Bentleys, Ferraris, Lamborghinis. All the cars I'd only ever seen in magazines were parked here like they were nothing. My eyes swept over the collection, finally landing on the most understated car there, a black Audi A8. "That'll do." I found the key, slid into the driver's seat, and started the engine. The powerful engine let out a low growl, like a sleeping beast awakened. I pulled out of the driveway and quickly caught up to Isabella, who was just about to get into her own chauffeured car at the gate. I rolled down the window and whistled. "Hey, beautiful. Need a ride?" Isabella's face instantly darkened. Her driver and bodyguard stared at me as if I were some kind of god. In front of everyone, Isabella gritted her teeth, opened the passenger door, and slid in. "Drive," she said through clenched teeth. "You got it, honey. Hold on tight." I slammed my foot on the gas, and the Audi shot forward like an arrow. The force of the acceleration threw Isabella back against her seat, knocking her silk scarf askew. "Now, slow down," she yelped. I glanced at her in the rearview mirror, fuming and flustered, and felt a surge of satisfaction. Teasing this ice queen was quickly becoming my new favorite pastime. The car settled into a smooth drive on the way to West Side. Isabella readjusted her scarf and her composure, returning to her icy demeanor. She stared out the window, refusing to speak to me. We were stopped at a red light when it happened. Crash, a loud bang, and our car jolted forward. I looked in the rearview mirror. A red Porsche 911 had slammed into our rear bumper. The door of the Porsche opened, and a young man in a loud Hawaiian shirt and a thick gold chain swaggered out. A few thuggish-looking guys followed him. The man stomped over to my window and banged on it. "Hey, Audi, get the hell out here." I rolled down the window, and a wave of alcohol fumes hit me. "Problem?" I asked calmly. The man was clearly drunk, his words slurred, his attitude obnoxious. "Problem? Are you blind? You rear-ended my car, you idiot," he yelled, pointing at his Porsche, which had nothing more than a paint scratch on its front bumper. Before I could say anything, Isabella spoke from the passenger seat, her voice like ice. "Look again. Your car rear-ended ours." The man finally noticed her. When he got a good look at her face, his eyes widened, and a slimy grin spread across his face. Well, look what we have here. A real beauty. Honey, what are you doing with this loser? Ditch him and come with me. I'll show you a good time." As he spoke, he reached out, trying to touch her face. A look of disgust flashed in Isabella's eyes, and she recoiled. My own eyes went cold. "Get your filthy hand off her," I said. My voice was quiet, but it carried an undeniable chill. "Whoa, listen to you. Got a big mouth, huh?" The man pulled his hand back and pointed at me. "Do you know who I am? My dad is Warren Wong. This whole side of town is our turf. You're not leaving until you pay me a few $100,000 and have your girl here come have a few drinks with me." Warren Wong. The name rang a bell. Some real estate tycoon who'd made his fortune through shady means on the West Side, with connections to both the legal and illegal worlds. No wonder his son was so arrogant. "Is that so?" I unbuckled my seatbelt and opened the door. "Then I'd really like to see how you're going to stop us from leaving." "You son of a bitch. You're asking for it." The man cursed and threw a punch in my face. I didn't even bother to dodge. Just as his fist was about to connect, my hand shot out and grabbed his wrist. "Act!" He cried out in pain, feeling as if his bones were being crushed. His lackeys saw what was happening and rushed forward, shouting, "Let go of Mr. Wong. You're dead, asshole." My eyes hardened. I tightened my grip on the man's wrist and swung. His 180-pound body flew through the air like a sack of potatoes, crashing into his friends and sending them all tumbling to the ground. Pedestrians had stopped to watch the commotion. I walked slowly toward the young man, now whimpering on the ground. "You were saying something about my girl having a drink with you." He looked at me, his eyes filled with terror. He finally realized he'd picked a fight with the wrong person. "No, that's not. Sir, I was wrong. I was drunk. I was just talking nonsense." He tried to scramble away, but I pinned him to the ground with my foot on his chest. A little late to be sorry. I pressed down slightly, and he let out a scream of agony. "Call your dad," I said coldly. "Tell him to bring some money and come pick up your body." "No." "Please, sir," he was terrified. "My dad. He's not in River City." "Really?" I pulled out my phone and dialed a number I hadn't used in 3 years. The call connected almost instantly. A deeply respectful voice came through the line. "Chairman, you finally contacted us." The voice was filled with pure joy. "Black Dragon," I said calmly. "I need you to look someone up for me. A real estate developer in River City named Warren Wong." "Yes, Chairman. Give me 30 seconds. Less than 30 seconds later, Black Dragon's voice was back. "Chairman, I have it. Warren Wong, CEO of Wong Real Estate. He made his fortune through illegal demolitions and strong-arm tactics. Currently, he's at the Golden Palace Casino on the West Side, playing cards with a group of his thugs." "Good." I hung up and looked down at the terrified young man at my feet. Your dad is at the Golden Palace. I'll give him 10 minutes to get his ass over here. Or else. I took my foot off his chest, turned my back on him, and got back in the car. Isabella had been watching the whole thing unfold in silence. From the moment I got out of the car, to the way I effortlessly took down those thugs, to the mysterious phone call. Her mind was reeling. Black Dragon? Chairman? They sounded like code names from some clandestine organization. She looked at me, her eyes filled with a mixture of awe and shock. Who was this man? Who was he calling? What kind of massive power was he hiding? She realized she knew almost nothing about her supposed fiancé, and the tiny glimpse she'd just seen was enough to shatter her entire worldview. Less than 10 minutes later, the screech of tires filled the air. A dozen black sedans screeched to a halt, and 100 men in black suits, armed with bats and pipes, jumped out and surrounded our car. A fat, middle-aged man with a brutish face, flanked by his entourage, stormed toward us. This had to be Warren Wong. Who? Who dares to touch my son? He bellowed. His son, his ribs now likely broken, scrambled over to his father and burst into tears. Dad, it's that guy. He beat me up. He said he was going to kill me. Seeing his son's pathetic state, Warren Wong's eyes turned red with fury. He pointed at our Audi and roared, "Smash that car to pieces. Drag the people inside out and break their legs." The 100 men surged forward, brandishing their weapons. The remaining onlookers scattered in terror. Isabella's face paled slightly. She was used to high-stakes boardrooms, but she'd never been in the middle of a gang war before. She instinctively grabbed my arm. I could feel her hand was cold and trembling slightly. I covered her hand with mine and gave it a gentle squeeze, offering her a reassuring look. Don't worry, they're just a bunch of clowns. Just as the thugs were about to descend on our car, the sky itself seemed to change. A deafening roar filled the air. Everyone looked up. 3 black military helicopters, flying in AV formation, screamed in from the horizon. The powerful downdraft from the rotor blades kicked up a storm of dust and debris, sending the thugs staggering. The helicopters hovered directly above our car, their presence so immense it felt like the air was being crushed. The door of the lead helicopter slid open, and a rope ladder was thrown down. A man in a black trench coat, his eyes as sharp as a hawk's, slid expertly down the rope. He landed and walked straight toward Warren Wong, ignoring the 100 armed men completely. You're Warren Wong? Black Dragon's voice was as cold as a Siberian winter. Wong was stunned by the sudden turn of events. Who are you people? He stammered. Black Dragon didn't answer. He pulled a black medallion from his coat. Engraved on it was a snarling dragon's head. The Pantheon is here. Black Dragon, River City Chapter, welcomes the return of the chairman. With those words, Black Dragon dropped to one knee, facing our car, and bowed his proud head. Behind him, from all 3 helicopters, came the unified roar of over 100 soldiers. We welcome the return of the chairman. The sound shook the earth and sky. Warren Wong and his men saw the medallion, heard the roar, and froze as if struck by lightning. Their faces went ashen, their souls seeming to flee their bodies. Thump! Warren Wong's legs gave out, and he collapsed to his knees. The Pantheon, the chairman of the Pantheon, the undisputed kings of the underworld, the arbiters of life and death. He never dreamed that his son would have the catastrophic misfortune of offending this legendary, godlike figure. It was over. It was all over. The entire intersection was silent. The only sound was the thumping of the helicopter blades. Warren Wong and his 100 men were frozen in place, their faces etched with absolute terror. Wong, kneeling on the pavement, was shaking so violently his pants were visibly wet. He'd pissed himself. The Pantheon, he whispered, his face gray. As a man who had clawed his way up through River City's underworld, he knew better than anyone what that name meant. It wasn't an organization. It was a myth, a legend, a forbidden name that could make entire nations tremble. And the chairman of the Pantheon was the myth within the myth. He couldn't believe his worthless son had managed to offend this living god. This wasn't just stepping on the wrong toes. This was trying to headbutt a nuclear missile. Inside the car, Isabella was petrified. She clamped her hand over her mouth to keep from screaming. Her cold, beautiful eyes were wide with a shock that went beyond comprehension. The chairman? The Pantheon? She looked at the man beside her, dressed in a casual shirt, a calm expression on his face, and felt her entire understanding of the world shatter into a million pieces. She thought he was just a skilled fighter, maybe the scion of some hidden family. She was so wrong. His true identity was 1,000 times more terrifying than anything she could have ever imagined. I pushed open my door and stepped out. Chairman, Black Dragon, seeing me, knelt again, his head bowed even lower. I walked over and put a hand on his shoulder. Get up. I've told you before, no grand entrances. My apologies, sir. Black Dragon stood, remaining at a respectful distance, the fanatic adoration in his eyes impossible to hide. I ignored him and walked over to the whimpering Warren Wong. Now, let's settle our accounts. I looked down at him, my voice calm, but carrying a weight that could crush a man's soul. Your son harassed my woman and tried to have my legs broken. You brought 100 men to destroy my car and cripple me. Tell me, how should we settle this? Warren Wong shuddered, snapping out of his terror-induced trance. He turned and slapped his still-dazed son across the face. Smack! You useless piece of trash. I'll kill you myself. He rained blows down on his son, turning his face into a bloody pulp. Get down on your knees and apologize to the chairman. His son, his spirit broken, scrambled on his hands and knees to my feet and began slamming his head on the pavement. Chairman, sir, I was wrong. I was blind. I'm not human. Please, spare my pathetic life. Warren Wong crawled over and hugged my legs, wailing. Chairman, it's my fault. I failed as a father. Kill me. Do whatever you want of me, but please spare my son. I'll give you everything. My entire fortune. Just please let this go. He had abandoned all dignity to save his life. I looked down at the pathetic pair, feeling no pity. Your entire fortune. I sneered. You think I care about your dirty money? A chill shot through Wong's heart. He was truly hopeless. Of course, the chairman of the Pantheon was one of the wealthiest men on the planet. Why would he care about his pathetic assets? Just as he resigned himself to death, my tone shifted. However, while I can't forgive your crimes, I can commute your sentence. Wong's head shot up, a glimmer of hope in his eyes. I hear your company owns quite a few properties. I asked calmly. Yes. From today on, you will cut the price of every property you own in half. You will also donate $50 million to build 100 schools for underprivileged children in River City. Do you have any objections? Wong was stunned, then overjoyed. Just cutting prices and donating money. This wasn't a punishment. It was a blessing. He would have given $50 billion to save his skin, let alone $50 million. No objections. None at all. I'll do it, Chairman. I'll get it done right away. He bowed his head to the ground repeatedly. Get out of my sight. I waved my hand as if shooing away a fly. Thank you, Chairman. Thank you for sparing my life. Wong, granted a new lease on life, grabbed his half-dead son and fled with his army of now useless thugs. The once tense intersection was quiet again. Black Dragon came to my side. Chairman, are you just going to let them go? Killing them would dirty my hands, I said, shaking my head. Letting them spend the rest of their lives atoning for their sins is more meaningful than a quick death. You are merciful, Chairman. All right, you can leave too. Do not return to River City without my direct order. Yes, sir. Though reluctant, Black Dragon immediately saluted, turned, and climbed back up the rope ladder. The 3 helicopters circled once and disappeared over the horizon. I got back into the car. Isabella was still frozen, unmoving. She looked at me, her eyes a storm of emotions, shock, fear, curiosity, and something else. A strange light she didn't recognize herself. You. She opened her mouth, but no words came out. Ask what you want to ask, I said, starting the car again. She was silent for a long time before she found her voice. Are you really the chairman of the Pantheon? You saw it yourself? I didn't deny it. Then why are you? She wanted to ask why I was content to be an unemployed gamer, why I had agreed to her ridiculous scheme. Because I was tired. I wanted a peaceful life. I answered, guessing her question. As for why I agreed to help you, I told you. Because it's fun. Fun. Isabella let out a bitter laugh. The king of the underworld agreed to be her fake fiancé. Because it was fun. Who would believe such a ridiculous reason? But as she looked at my calm profile, she had a feeling it might just be the truth. For a man standing at the pinnacle of the world, power and fortune had probably lost their appeal. Perhaps all he wanted was the simple pleasures that normal people took for granted. Then, our agreement, she asked hesitantly. Making a deal with a man who could summon military helicopters on a whim felt like making a deal with the devil. The agreement still stands, I smiled. 1 year. We stay out of each other's way. Don't worry, I'm really not interested in your company. I just want a quiet place to play my games. Isabella was speechless. The underworld emperor who made all of River City tremble. His greatest ambition was to play video games in peace. The contrast was just too much. The car started moving again, heading smoothly toward the West Side branch. But this time, the atmosphere inside had changed. Isabella was no longer cold and distant. Every now and then, she would sneak a glance at me from the corner of her eye. She was looking at an enigma, a puzzle she might spend her entire life trying to solve. And she was becoming hopelessly, deeply fascinated by it. When we arrived at the West Side office, Isabella threw herself back into her work, as decisive and commanding as ever, as if the dramatic events on the road had never happened. But I could tell she had changed. She would glance at me subconsciously during meetings. Her focus would drift when she was signing documents. The icy wall she kept between herself and her employees seemed to have thawed, just a little. As for me, I was happy to relax on the couch in her office, my laptop on my lap, my headphones on, completely lost in my game. The sun streamed through the window, warm and pleasant. A business empress, a few feet away, managed deals worth hundreds of millions, while her fiancé casually played a video game. It was a bizarre scene, but it had a strange kind of harmony. At noon, after Isabella finished her work, we went back to the villa for lunch instead of eating out. Mrs. Gable had prepared a lavish meal. During the meal, Isabella couldn't hold back any longer. "Leo, can I ask you a question?" "Shoot," I said, not looking up from the braised pork on my plate. "You're so powerful. Why did you choose to come back to River City and live as a normal person?" she asked, voicing the biggest question in her mind. I swallowed my food and looked up at her seriously. "Because this is my home. No matter how great the outside world is, it's not home." And I paused, a flicker of sadness in my eyes. I promised someone I would watch over the peace and quiet of this world for him. He was my best friend, my brother in arms, who sacrificed himself to cover my retreat. His last wish was for me to leave that world of darkness and live a good, normal life. Isabella seemed to understand something from my expression. She didn't press the issue. Instead, she quietly put a piece of food on my plate. "Eat more." It was the first time she had ever done something for me voluntarily. It was a small gesture, but it warmed my heart. That afternoon, I didn't go back to the office with Isabella. I stayed at the villa and continued my gaming crusade. Before she left, she gave me a long, searching look as if she wanted to say something, but in the end, she just turned and walked away. Life seemed to settle into a peaceful rhythm. My days consisted of eating, sleeping, and gaming. Occasionally, I would act as Isabella's driver and accompany her to some boring business dinner. At these events, as the mysterious fiancé of the great Ms. Vance, I naturally became the center of attention. Many arrogant rich kids and business elites try to test me or outright try to steal my girl right in front of me. I usually couldn't be bothered with them, but there were always a few who just had to push it. Like Derek Hamilton, the heir to the Hamilton family, another one of River City's powerhouses. Derek had been pursuing Isabella relentlessly for years, considering her his personal property. My appearance was a huge threat and a personal insult to him. At charity gala, he blocked our path in front of everyone. "Isabella, long time no see. You look more beautiful than ever," he said, holding a glass of wine, a foxy smile on his face. He deliberately ignored me. "Derek, can I help you?" Isabella said coolly. "Not all. I was just hoping for a dance," he said, extending his hand in a polite invitation. But his eyes were locked on me, full of challenge. Everyone turned to watch the show. Isabella frowned and was about to refuse, but I beat her to it, taking her hand in mine. "Sorry, Derek," I said, pulling her closer to me, staking my claim. "My fiancé's dance card is full tonight. It's all me." Derek's face turned ugly. "Who the hell do you think you are, trying to compete with me?" he hissed. "I'm her man. Is that reason enough? I shot back. Fine. Just fine. Derek laughed a cold, angry sound. You got guts, kid. Do you have any idea what happens to people who cross the Hamilton family? Nope. And I don't care to find out. I took Isabella's arm and started to walk away. Stop. Derek roared. If you walk out of here tonight, I'll change my family name. The moment he spoke, a few of his bodyguards moved to block our path. The other guests backed away, not wanting to get caught in the crossfire. Isabella's expression turned cold. Derek, don't go too far. Too far, he sneered. I'll show you what too far is. Break his legs. That line again. I sighed. Why was everyone so obsessed with breaking my legs? Just as the Hamiltons' bodyguards were about to move, the grand doors of the ballroom were kicked open from the outside. A middle-aged man in a crisp black suit, radiating an aura of command, stormed in, followed by dozens of soldiers armed with assault rifles. The man leading them had the shining stars of a general on his shoulders. It was the supreme commander of the River City Military District, General Armstrong. As soon as he entered, his sharp eyes scanned the room, finally landing on Derek and his bodyguards. Who dares to cause trouble here? The general's voice boomed like thunder. Derek's bodyguards were terrified. Their guns clattered to the floor. Derek was stunned. What was General Armstrong doing here? And with so many soldiers? General Armstrong, what brings you here? Derek's father, the head of the Hamilton family, quickly pushed his way through the crowd, his face plastered with a sycophantic smile. General Armstrong didn't even glance at him. He strode through the crowd and stopped right in front of me. Then, under the utterly dumbfounded gaze of every single person in the room, he snapped to attention and gave me, the unemployed slacker in a casual suit, a perfect military salute. Sir, General Armstrong reporting for duty, instructor. His voice was powerful, echoing through the entire ballroom. Instructor? That one word was like a bomb, detonating in everyone's mind. The Hamiltons, father and son, looked as if they had been struck by lightning. The color drained from their faces, and they collapsed to the floor. They finally understood what kind of unimaginable being they had just provoked. The ballroom was so quiet you could hear a pin drop. Everyone was frozen, the same expression of pure, unadulterated shock on their faces. General Armstrong, the commander of the entire River City military, a man of immense power and influence. And he was saluting this unknown young man. Calling him instructor? It was too much to process. Especially for the Hamiltons. They were no longer afraid. They were in despair. Their family might be powerful in River City, but in the face of a nation's true military might, they were nothing but ants. And I, the poor kid they had been trying to crush, was the man the general himself saluted and called instructor. What kind of god-tier status was that? They couldn't even begin to imagine. Isabella stood beside me, her body trembling slightly. Her beautiful eyes were shining with a strange light. Chairman of the Pantheon, military instructor. How many other identities was this man hiding? He was like an endless treasure chest. Just when you think you've seen it all, he reveals something new, something even more shocking. I looked at the respectful General Armstrong and rubbed my temples wearily. I told you, I'm retired. Don't call me instructor. Once an instructor, always an instructor, he insisted, his eyes burning with fanatic devotion. If it weren't for you, sir, creating the Dragon Corps and personally training us, we'd still be a bunch of nobodies. Dragon Corps. At the mention of that name, some of the more knowledgeable people in the crowd gasped. The Dragon Corps, the nation's most elite, most secretive special forces unit. Every member was the best of the best, undertaking only the most dangerous, top-secret missions. And this young man was their founder and chief instructor. My God, this wasn't just terrifying. This was legendary. I gave up arguing with him about the title and pointed to the puddle of terrified Hamiltons on the floor. Take care of them. Yes, instructor. The general turned, his eyes instantly turning to ice. Take them away. Investigate every illegal activity of the Hamilton family. Prosecute them to the fullest extent of the law. Yes, sir. The soldiers moved in and dragged the fainted Hamiltons away like sacks of garbage. A storm that would reshape the entire business landscape of River City had just begun, all with a casual wave of my hand. After dealing with the Hamiltons, General Armstrong came back to me and hesitated for a moment. Instructor, the higher-ups. They've been wanting to meet with you. Not interested, I said flatly. I understand. Though disappointed, he didn't dare press the issue. Anything else? If not, take your men and go. Don't ruin the party, I said, shooing him away. Yes, sir. He saluted one last time and left with his men as quickly as he had arrived. The ballroom was quiet once more, but the atmosphere would never be the same. Everyone looked at me with a mixture of awe, fear, and a desperate desire to please. The people who had been whispering and sneering at me earlier now looked like they wanted the floor to swallow them whole. The host of the party, an old man with white hair, shakily approached me with a glass of wine. Mr. Miller, please forgive our earlier ignorance. I glanced at him without a word. The old man's knees buckled, and he almost fell. Isabella stepped in to save him. It's all right, Chairman Wong. It was just an accident. Yes, of course, Ms. Vance. With the ice broken, other guests plucked up the courage to approach me. Mr. Miller, you are truly a dragon among men. Mr. Miller and Ms. Vance are a match made in heaven. The noise was giving me a headache. I grabbed Isabella's hand and pulled her to a quiet corner. Are you satisfied now? She asked, looking at me with a complex expression. Satisfied with what? I asked. You have the entire city at your feet. You're playing everyone like puppets on a string. Aren't you satisfied? There was a strange, pouty tone to her voice. I looked at her and suddenly grinned. Are you jealous? Her face instantly flushed a deep red. Who's jealous? Don't be ridiculous, she stammered, avoiding my eyes. Seeing her so flustered was adorable. I couldn't resist reaching out and gently pinching her cheek. Her skin was so soft and smooth. Isabella froze, as if she'd been struck by lightning. In her entire life, no man had ever dared to be so familiar with her. She should have been angry. She should have slapped me. But strangely, she felt no anger at all. In fact, she felt a little thrill. Now, before she could finish, I leaned in, and in front of everyone, I kissed her. Her lips were soft, cool, with a hint of sweetness. Isabella's eyes went wide, her mind a complete blank. The world seemed to stop. The kiss was light, brief, barely a touch. But the shock it sent through her was more powerful than all my revealed identities combined. Her world, in that moment, collapsed, only to be rebuilt in an entirely new way. She just stood there, forgetting to breathe, forgetting to think, her heart hammering against her ribs. A fire was burning on her cheeks, spreading to the tips of her ears. And I, as if nothing had happened, licked my lips and said, Not bad. Strawberry. You bastard. Isabella finally snapped out of it. She raised her hand to slap me, a furious blush on her face. But I caught her wrist and pulled her into my arms. What? I whispered in her ear, for only her to hear. Is it illegal to kiss my own fiancé? She was speechless, her face now the color of a ripe tomato. She struggled, but my arms were like steel band around her. The other guests, seeing this, all smiled knowingly. To them, this wasn't a fight. This was a loving couple playing around. Mr. Miller and Ms. Vance are so in love. I know, right? They're so sweet. I think I'm getting a cavity. Hearing the whispers around her, Isabella grew even more embarrassed and buried her face in my chest. I held her close, a wide grin on my face. It looked like this iceberg was finally about to melt. The gala that had shaken River City's high society to its core ended with Isabella and me leaving in a sweet embrace. In the car on the way back, she leaned against the window, her face still flushed, not saying a word. The atmosphere was no longer cold and awkward, but warm and a little intimate. When we got back to the villa, Mrs. Gable saw us walk in holding hands, though Isabella was being forced, and beamed. Sir, Ms. Vance, you back. I've prepared a late-night snack. No need, Mrs. Gable, we're not hungry, I said with a smile, then pulled the still-dazed Isabella upstairs. I didn't go to my room. I went straight to hers. Leo, what are you doing? We had a deal. You can't come in my room. She finally snapped out of it and started to struggle. Things have changed, I said, pushing open her door. Her bedroom was huge, decorated in a minimalist, cool style, just like her. The air smelled of her light, fresh perfume. I pinned her against the door, my hands on either side of her head. Isabella, I said, looking into her eyes which were flickering with nervousness. I know we started with a ridiculous misunderstanding, but now I want to turn that misunderstanding into a reality. I don't care who you were in the past or who you'll be in the future. All I know is that from the first moment I saw you at that party, you've been in my head. I like you, not because of who you are or how beautiful you are, just because you're you. So give me a chance, and give yourself a chance. Okay. My voice was low and deep, every word a stone dropping into the already turbulent waters of her heart. Isabella was completely stunned. She had never heard such a direct, passionate confession. All her life, the men who pursued her were after her family or her looks. Their advances were filled with calculation and greed. Only him, only this man, who held the power to look down on the entire world, was telling her that he liked her for who she was. In that moment, the icy wall she had built around her heart for more than 20 years finally, completely, melted away. A single, crystalline tear rolled down her cheek, not of sadness, but of pure, unadulterated joy. She didn't say a word. She just rose up on her toes and, clumsily but with all her heart, kissed me. This kiss was not a fleeting touch. It was filled with all the emotion she had suppressed for so long. Outside, the moonlight streamed into the room, casting our two embracing figures in a long, beautiful silhouette on the floor. I knew, from that moment on, I was no longer alone. I had found my home, and River City, and maybe even the world, would enter a new era because of us. But that was a story for another day. Right now, all I wanted was to hold the woman I loved and enjoy this peaceful, beautiful night. As for tomorrow, tomorrow was a new day. There would probably be more trouble. But so what? I'd deal with it. After all, I'm Leo Miller, just a regular guy who wants to play video games in peace with his wife. End.